at first glance of the book, man, just right. What's the first thing you do when you get a book? You start flipping through it.
You just start flipping.
You just start flipping. There's really no rhyme or reason. And bro, the pictures are ridiculous.
Well,
You'd already
we're
put
in the
some
lab
up before. I mean,
right here. That's
right behind you, right? You got all the lights.
Yeah.
You've got everything there. I mean, the pictures are, and you did these pictures too, man, which is so.
Yeah.
How often does that happen, where the chef does the pictures too?
I'll tell you,
talent all to itself.
Well, and I don't consider myself a photographer, so this was like way out of my comfort zone.
You should now.
I mean, I had to. I didn't have to. This was something the publisher actually asked me if I wanted to do. Before this, I've only really, it's been something I played with on Instagram, but I never took myself that seriously. Just something I enjoyed. Like, I think for me, like anything that I do, I want to do it at least decent,
Awesome.
And so even on Instagram, I tried to figure this out. But when the publisher said, "Hey, you want to do your own photos?" I said, "What? You think I'm capable of that?"
Yeah.
So that was a whole other challenge.
Did you have all the gear or some of the gear? Or what was the deal with that, like gear wise?
I had most of it. I got a second camera. Before the book, I was using one. And then if I was changing shots overhead or whatever, I was doing the manual work. So it was only when I posted on Instagram. But when I had to do 65 like print quality photos very quickly, it forced me to kind of think about how to do this a little bit more efficiently and consistently. Because when you're flipping through it, again, Instagram is one thing, but when you're flipping through a book, you want a consistent level
I see.
in terms of lighting and exposure and kind of an aesthetic that runs through the book.
Yeah.
And so every time I move my camera from the overhead mount to the face, the front on mount, you're readjusting levels. It became worth it for me to invest in some new equipment so that I'm kind of plug and play now, where like I got my camera on the same settings in every photo in there. And then I'm just kind of popping a different dish in, and it gave me a rhythm and a consistency that was really like required for something going into print. Yeah. So I did have to invest a little bit, but I don't have crazy expensive cameras. They're I mean, you could find $2,000-$3,000 lenses. Forget about the cameras that people use.
Yeah, that's true. The lenses you're right. It's the lenses.
Yeah, but I shot the whole book with two $500 cameras and two $100 lenses. I'm cool with that.
Can you say what the camera brand is?
Yeah, they're Canons. It's
Canons,
lens,
beautiful
Canon cameras.
That's what I got right here, baby.
Canons. Yeah, T7Is.
Nice.
I bought one of them used. The second one I bought it used because I'm like, fine.
There's really nothing wrong with. I like used lenses. I do that. I mean, all the time, like 100%.
As long as they're not trashed, like it's fine. Yeah,
that's what it's for. Honestly, that's what that industry is for. It's made for that stuff to be passed around and moved around.
It's cool though, because I don't know if I can like do this in reverse.
These pictures. I'm so distracted, dude. These pictures are ridiculous.
Show us which one are you looking at?
Like I'm looking at all of them, guys. Like, holy cow!
Pork belly. I mean, that Korean pork belly.
It's like literally every picture is like money shot, right? Like every picture is ridiculous, dude. Just ridiculous. And that's what's so great. You made the food. You come up with the recipes. You also design the aesthetic of the layout of the dish and taking you just controlled everything about it. It's just so beautiful. Like, it's just amazing, dude.
I really appreciate that. I was very insecure about this piece because, like, dude, you're a chef. Like, first
I've
of all,
done a lot of food photography. It's hard.
It's hard.
And right, it's just so hard.
Even with food, I bet you're like me, where like I feel every dish could always be a little better. Like, there's always a dash of salt or whatever. Even if people who are eating and they're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing," I'm like, "Yeah."
You always critique, of course, because you know what it was supposed to be from the beginning,
and
right?
It's
and no one else does.
That's the little like kind of the artistic piece of food that I love is like it can always be refined a little bit, an extra grain of salt, an extra pinch of cayenne, but I am not a photographer or a writer by trade, and so. Man, this book pushed me out of my element and really forced me. It really forced me to like, just get better, just learn a craft and fucking like take it seriously. Like I said, food photography was a hobby for me with Instagram and stuff, but this really forced me to like work on it.
Which is great, because that's the new era, right? That's where we're moving, in the direction of people having autonomy with their brand and what they do. And because we have tools. I mean, as much as you want to talk about these different social media and this, that, they do give you an option to create a platform and financially, right, sustain yourself. And if you have the people are learning how to do these things, right? And
that's right.
The more you can learn these tools, I mean, it's the better.
Yeah. And I feel like in today's like 2020, 2021 coming up here, like having one skill set's almost not enough anymore. It's like you got to be able to do a couple things at least. I don't know, especially if you're kind of self-employed and trying to make it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't just be good at like the one thing you do. You got to wear different hats. It's tough, man, out here. It's tough trying to make it in this space where you're not getting a bi-weekly paycheck and you're trying to just like make it work on your own. It's tough.
Absolutely, man. That's the hustle. But that's where, you know, you hear success stories, and you hear that part of the story that you're saying. And that's always a lot of times a moment where you can walk away because it's right. It's whatever. Or you start to peel away slowly from it. That's another way, right? The death by 1,000 cuts. So you slowly start to pull away from it and start to go down this other avenue that's more, you know, whatever, just safe, I guess. I mean, if I had to use a word, right? Just whatever, a 9-to-5, or you took a job, right? A corporate job, something, you just took something different. Whereas it's that moment where you just almost have to dig in twice as hard, to be honest with you, to really, because the truth is, if you keep going with it, it will become something. It really will. If you put hard work into it, it really will.
It's tough though. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There are days that, you know, every day is not a good day, right? Like there are days where I'm like, I don't know where the hell I'm getting my next paycheck. And there are days where I'm like, man, should I just am I going to need to get a job, or should I just get a job and stop putting myself through this madness all the time? And there's other days where I'm like so grateful to be on this journey and like just having a blast, you know, regardless of money, I'm just having a blast and kind of seeing things through that I've always dreamed of. But it's not easy there. I'm not going to lie. There's
maybe it's a mix
where I'm like, maybe. That's true.
That happened. Like you said, you have to have multiple talents, and you'll notice that with people that are successful, they got multiple things going on. They got multiple streams. They got a job here. They're doing this. They're doing that. And sometimes
I know successful people, and then they're like driving Uber at night and like doing like just hustling, like doing whatever. You got to
absolutely.
And I respect that 100%. And I've been there. I have worked a day job and then went to the restaurant at 4:00 and got out at 1 a.m. and then was back at the office at 8 a.m. to like, cause I needed to when I was in my 20s and stuff. And I did that for a long time, working 2 jobs. I respect the hustle. And you know, if that's where I gotta go, that's where I gotta go. I'm just hoping to kind of like keep being able to share my food and stay alive. Like,
that's never going to stop, dude. You'll always keep. Yeah. Right. That's never going to stop from you, dude. No matter what. Yeah. Look, the journey always, you always thinking this about movies. Okay. This is a good analogy here. Okay. I was thinking this about movies and actors, and how some actors can, you know, live through different decades and periods and still, you know, retain some sort of relevance. Right. And other actors start to fall out. And you think, why does that start to happen? And I think what happens is, right, you get used to a certain thing and then you don't want to leave that, but the world changes and you kind of have to take those risks and those chances with the changes. And right, I understand it needs to be calculated, but you know, I think it's the risk takers. It's the ones that, you know, are willing to fall down, that willing to go with something new, even if you're used to something else, you know, an older actor taking on some new kind of movie that's different, right? But they do it. They go for it. And then it becomes some big hit, right? And then they're relevant again. And that's who sticks around. You know, I think chefs are the same way. Chefs who take a risk, who have been around a long time, and they're like, boom, I'm going to come out with a new concept that's going to, you're never going to see this coming.
Oh, food changes constantly.
Yeah. You got to stay with it.
And what's trendy and like, man, it changes constantly.
Or staying ahead of that, creating the trends as well.
Now like there's this whole online food world. It's a whole different thing that I've kind of fallen 100%. Into and is a whole other game. But I to your point, like I see what you mean about actors in Hollywood, or like, truth be told, in a lot of like the entertainment space, you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to kind of like be flexible and like if you're, and this kind of ties into our wearing multiple hats discussion too, because you can be the best in the world at one specific thing, but it's gonna run out. Someone's gonna, push it to a new level, or a new trend is going to come out or whatever, and like, I think about that a lot with keto. I'll be honest. It doesn't concern me because I was, I've been cooking for my whole life. So I've been keto for 2.5 years. I love all food and can get passionate about all food. I'll probably be keto for the rest of my life, but I still do a bunch of private chef stuff that nothing to do with keto at all. I love cooking all food. So people constantly say to me, oh, what happens if keto dies out? Then I'll cook something else. I don't understand the question.
Like, people still got to eat, right? Like, yeah.
And the other part of that
I don't understand the question. That's funny.
The other part of it is like, is anybody going to sit here to my face and tell me that we should all be eating the same amount of sugar that we do today? You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah. That's a great point.
American diet is saturated with sugar from breakfast through the whole day, right?
Yeah.
And
drinks,
maybe
food,
keto
everything
will die out. Yeah, maybe keto will die out as a trend. But I think that the idea of eating whole foods, meat and veggies that are just still, I don't think that's a trend. I think that's just common sense for me, at least. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
You're not.
We'll check back in with me in 5 years or whatever. Yeah. but we'll see. You can mark my words.
You got a new cookbook. It's like new something else cooking, right? It's
right.
Like, which would be cool if you did that, right? Because that would show there's nothing growth and change. And hey, I do other kinds of cooking. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
I mean, I worked with a chef. Awesome guy. I met him at a Spanish restaurant I worked at. And then I came back around and he was working at a French restaurant. I mean, it's like chefs have to learn a lot of, you can't just be good at one thing to make it in this business, I think.
Absolutely. And you can pop around really not too hard. A few days in the kitchen, you learn a few of the different things, but you start to learn a lot of the stuff's pretty similar, right? To how we do things. You're just going to learn specifics. And the longer you work in a kitchen, the quicker you pick up those specifics. That's all that is, right? That's really what it is. And that's what you want to do. You want to jump around and, oh, this is cool. This is a new way to prep this or do this, or this is how they cook this protein. And yeah, absolutely. It makes you more, able-bodied to do anything or take an opportunity somewhere else.
For sure. But the food world's constantly changing. The health community's constantly changing.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
kind of parts. It's always shifting. I remember the food of the 90s and, today it's like fashion or anything like
great point.
It's funny. Yeah. Like you ever watch a movie that doesn't feel, maybe it was like 2005, early 2000s. And it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but just the visual, you're like, man, this thing looks so old. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like the resolution.
Yes. There you go.
That's how I think about food. Like in 5 years, we're going to look back on this and be like, that was so outdated.
What was that? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What was
100%. That? But then there's things that are always tried and true, right? They're timeless, always just timeless stuff. That's why it's always nice to just take something familiar and give it the twist, right?